Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a friendship so powerful that it could change the course of the world, only to watch it fall apart because of one man's ego? Once the U.S. and India stood side by side, partners in technology, defense, and hope. The future looked unstoppable, but today cracks have appeared, trust has vanished, and people are asking what really happened. The answer may shock you because it wasn't an army, it wasn't politics, it wasn't war. It was one Indian whose actions changed everything, and tonight we're going to uncover how it happened and what it means for the world. When we talk about the rise of nations, we often imagine armies, economies, and leaders making grand decisions. But the real strength of any country lies in the partnerships it builds, the alliances that carry it beyond its borders. The U.S.-India relationship was not born out of convenience. It was forged out of shared vision. Both nations believed in democracy, freedom, and progress through collaboration. Together, they inspired millions across the globe, two giants from different worlds, moving toward one future. When technology, defense, and education aligned between them, the results were groundbreaking. India's innovation met America's infrastructure. America's research met India's resilience. They were not competitors, they were complements, like two strong arms lifting the same weight. But the beauty of such a partnership is also its weakness. It requires patience, honesty, and mutual respect. The moment either side forgets that, the balance collapses. That's where things began to shift. Instead of working as equals, one side started to see itself as indispensable, as if the alliance could not exist without it. Pride turned into power, and cooperation began to look like control. The vision that once united both nations slowly started fading behind a curtain of suspicion. When respect is replaced by ego, even the strongest bridge begins to tremble. It's easy to celebrate friendship when things are going well, but the true test comes when both sides have something to lose. The U.S. and India once stood for more than trade, they stood for global hope. Yet somewhere along the path, the mission blurred, and what was once a partnership built on shared goals began to look like a stage for political advantage. That's when the seeds of destruction were quietly planted, unnoticed but inevitable. Trust is the heartbeat of every alliance. It doesn't come through signatures or speeches. It's built through consistent action, through standing by your word when no one is watching. The U.S.-India partnership was once defined by that kind of trust, an understanding that both sides would protect, uplift, and respect each other's interests. But trust can die faster than it's built. One decision made in the name of politics, one word spoken out of pride, can undo decades of goodwill. That's exactly what happened when ego entered the equation. What began as minor disagreements soon turned into deep suspicion. The U.S. started to question whether India's motives were aligned with shared progress or personal power. Each diplomatic meeting became a test of loyalty rather than collaboration. Promises were made, but follow-through became rare. Publicly, smiles and handshakes remained. Privately, calculations replaced trust. The sense of mutual respect that once made both nations powerful together started to fade, replaced by a subtle tension, one that everyone felt but few dared to admit. When pride takes control, transparency disappears. The U.S. began to feel that it was being used not as a partner, but as a prop to project influence, and India, in turn, believed it could leverage its global value to push boundaries without consequences. But alliances don't survive manipulation, they survive honesty. The very thing that made this friendship strong, belief in each other's integrity, was the first thing to break. And when trust breaks between nations, it doesn't shatter loudly, it crumbles quietly, piece by piece, behind closed doors. That's how it began, not with confrontation, but with cold silence. And in that silence, a bond built over decades started to die, not from hate, but from disappointment. Every downfall has a face behind it, a decision maker who lets ambition overshadow wisdom. In this story, it wasn't an entire government or a foreign power that caused the fracture, it was one individual. One Indian whose hunger for recognition became greater than the desire for progress. He wanted to be seen as the man who put his nation above all, but in chasing that spotlight, he forgot that true leadership isn't about being admired, it's about being accountable. His speeches were filled with pride, his tone with certainty, and his image with confidence. Yet behind the applause was a growing distance between allies who once trusted his every word. This individual began to play a double game, praising partnership in public, but pursuing self-interest in private. Every move was calculated, not for long-term stability, but for personal legacy. The focus shifted from cooperation to control, from global unity to domestic power. What should have been diplomatic brilliance turned into manipulation masked as nationalism. It wasn't the kind of patriotism that builds nations. It was the kind that blinds them. The U.S. noticed the shift, the mixed signals, the broken promises, the sudden shift in tone. What was once partnership started to look like strategy, and what was once friendship began to feel like performance. A single man's actions began to cast a shadow over millions who believed in the bond between the two nations. His influence became so powerful that truth itself began to bend around his words. He didn't need an army to break the alliance, his pride did that for him. One man's ambition replaced decades of trust. And by the time the world realized it, the damage was already done, silent, irreversible, and far more dangerous than anyone expected. America has always valued loyalty over flattery. It doesn't matter how powerful a nation becomes, if honesty fades, respect follows. When the U.S. realized that the partnership it had built with India was slowly being turned into a political instrument, it felt betrayed. What was meant to be a collaboration of equals was now being used as a tool to project dominance. At first, America tried to ignore the warning signs, the one-sided deals, the lack of transparency, the constant shift in tone, but soon it became impossible to overlook. What had been friendship now started to feel like a game, and no one likes being played. When trade deals were suddenly changed and communication lines turned cold, Washington understood that the relationship had reached a breaking point. America doesn't respond with anger, it responds with distance. Diplomatic warmth turned into polite restraint. Military talks slowed. Economic projects were quietly paused. It was not punishment, it was a message that said, "We build with trust, not tricks." For America, it was a wake-up call, not just about India, but about the danger of allowing ego-driven politics to shape international partnerships. Behind closed doors, officials admitted that the energy had shifted. There was caution where there used to be confidence, and skepticism where there used to be optimism. The U.S. no longer saw a dependable ally, it saw a self-serving player in the global game, and when that realization sank in, the silence between both sides grew louder. America's decision wasn't emotional, it was strategic. It understood that respect cannot exist without reciprocity, so it chose distance over deception. That was the turning point, the moment when America stopped being patient and started being protective of its own principles. Behind every global event, there are truths that never make headlines, conversations that happen behind closed doors, and warnings that never reach the public. While the world watched the U.S.-India relationship cool down, leaders within the inner circles knew exactly why. The tension wasn't about trade deficits or defense agreements, it was about integrity. When Donald Trump spoke about foreign relationships, he didn't mince words. He respected strength, but he despised manipulation. His approach may have been blunt, but it was brutally honest, and it exposed something the world wasn't ready to face. Trump saw what was happening long before it became obvious. He noticed that promises made in the name of partnership were often driven by hidden motives. He saw charm being used as a political weapon, and he didn't like it. Behind his confident statements was a growing frustration not toward the people of India, but toward the man who was using the alliance as a personal stage. When he said, "I like India, but I don't like being played," it wasn't an insult, it was a revelation. It was the truth stripped of diplomacy, a reminder that respect demands honesty. What Trump exposed wasn't hatred or rivalry, it was a warning about trust. He understood that once ego enters the room, unity leaves quietly. His words echoed a reality that many leaders ignored, that no matter how grand the speeches, an alliance built on pretense will eventually collapse. America's disappointment wasn't rooted in politics, it was rooted in deception. When the truth surfaced, the mask fell off. The world saw not a misunderstanding, but a manipulation that had gone too far. And from that moment, the U.S.-India relationship was never the same again, cautious, colder, and painfully real. Every fracture in history carries a message, and this one is no different. The fall of trust between two great nations is not just a diplomatic event, it's a human lesson. Power, when driven by ego, consumes itself. The U.S.-India alliance once stood as proof that democracy and diversity could work hand in hand, that two nations with different cultures could share a single vision for progress. But when pride began to overshadow purpose, that vision lost its light. The partnership didn't fail because of weakness. It failed because one side forgot that alliances thrive on humility, not dominance. Real strength is not about control, it's about cooperation. Nations, like people, must learn to listen as much as they lead. When one country tries to use another as a ladder to climb higher, both end up falling. The truth is, no superpower can stand alone in a world built on interdependence. America and India were meant to complement each other, technology and talent, innovation and ambition. But when the balance broke, so did the bond. Still, there's hope in every lesson. Mistakes, no matter how costly, are also opportunities to rebuild better, to replace pride with purpose and control with connection. If these two nations can remember why they came together, not for politics, but for progress, they can create something even stronger than before. But it will take honesty, empathy, and the courage to admit that both sides failed. The world doesn't need alliances of convenience anymore. It needs partnerships of conviction. The moment both nations understand that, they'll rise again, not as rivals trying to outshine each other, but as allies determined to light the world together. Because unity, not ego, is what truly defines greatness. So here we are standing at the edge of a truth many tried to ignore. The relationship between two of the world's greatest democracies didn't collapse overnight. It eroded slowly through pride, deception, and misplaced ambition. But the lesson isn't about blame, it's about awareness. We must understand that no alliance, no friendship, no partnership can survive when honesty disappears. The U.S.-India bond was never just political. It was emotional, built on shared dreams and mutual respect. And though one man's ego may have cracked its foundation, the spirit that once united these nations still lives within their people. Because true power doesn't come from control, it comes from character. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: never let ego replace empathy. Whether in nations, businesses, or our own lives, trust is the most valuable currency we hold. Rebuild it, protect it, live by it. Demand truth from those who lead you and courage from those who represent you. The future doesn't belong to those who manipulate. It belongs to those who cooperate. The U.S. and India can rise again stronger, wiser, and more united, but only if both sides remember that greatness is never achieved alone. It's achieved together. Thank you for listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Because understanding truth requires courage, and you showed that today. Remember, history doesn't end here. It's still being written by people like you who dare to think, question, and hope. So stay aware, stay inspired, and never stop believing in unity over division, truth over illusion, and humanity over politics. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay strong, stay wise, and keep building bridges, not walls.